She thought she buried the doll with her daughter. Then the man with the cart pulled it from his coat, bone white and clean. The rail cart came screaming down the hill like it didn't care whether it stopped or not. Its rusted wheels caught rocks, bounced, jerked left near the fence. Chickens scattered. The dog didn't bark, just stood. She came out slow, rag tied over her hand. Apron is stiff with flour and sweat. I stood on the porch and waited. The man was thin, too thin. His coat hung off him like it remembered a bigger man. He had a limp that didn't seem new, and when he pulled the brake, he winced like it was something that hurt inside the bone. He didn't speak right away, just let the cart hiss quiet. Then, water. She didn't answer. He took one step closer and saw the bucket near the trough. I looked at her again. Still nothing. He reached into his coat. She gripped the rail. He pulled out a doll, white, clean, not new. Its face was scratched faintly across the cheek, just beneath one glassy eye, one braid undone. The hem of its dress was still torn, the same corner she remembered, torn from the fire, torn from the night her daughter didn't make it. He placed it on the porch, carefully, not like a threat. She stared at it, didn't blink. "You dig her up?" He didn't look at her, just said, "No, ma'am." "Then how?" "She gave it to me." Now she blinked. He didn't move. "I watched her sew it," she said. "She told me that too." "That doll burned." "She didn't." She stepped off the porch. "Say that again." "I didn't say she's alive." "Then what did you say?" He looked at the doll. "She didn't burn." "You're talking in circles." "I ain't the one that buried her wrong." That got her close, closer than he maybe wanted. She stared at the doll, at the man, back at the doll. "You're not from here." "No, ma'am." "You know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am." "Say it." He hesitated. "You're the widow who doesn't go to town anymore." "What do they call me?" "They call you worse." She glanced toward the barn, toward the well. "Have you seen it?" "Yes, ma'am." "You go near it?" "No, ma'am." "You hear it?" "Yes." They both looked at the doll again. She bent down, picked it up. It was light, hollow feeling. She turned it in her hands. The back stitching, she remembered that thread. Black, coarse. Her daughter sewed it with her own hair once because thread kept snapping. It was there. "You want water?" she said finally. "Please." She nodded toward the trough. He walked slowly, limped harder now, every step like it scraped old hurt. He didn't say thank you, just knelt, cupped both hands, drank like he hadn't in days. She stayed on the porch, doll still in hand. He drank quietly. She watched him. The dog laid down beside her feet. No growl, just the wind and the rail cart clicking in the cooling metal. "You said she gave it to you." "I didn't lie." "When?" He looked at the sky. "Could have been 6 days. Could have been 16. "You see her face?" "No." "Then how'd you know it was her?" He looked at her now. "She knew your name." That silenced everything. The wind held its breath. Even the chickens stopped pecking. She sat. Porch creaked beneath her. "You from down river?" "Used to be." "You got people?" "No, ma'am." "You always talk this soft." He cracked a smile. "Only when I got nothing to prove." She looked at the doll again. "You're staying here tonight." He didn't protest. "Barn's open." "I saw." "You touch anything, I bury you beside the one you say didn't burn." He nodded once. "You believe in ghosts?" "I believe in memory." She stood. "Same thing." He gathered his coat back around him, turned toward the barn. The cart stayed where it was. Wind nudged it once, then let it be. She stood on the porch a long time after he disappeared into the straw. That night, she brought the doll inside, set it on the table, lit a single candle. She didn't touch her supper, just stared. Its face looked cleaner than it ever was in her daughter's hands. She whispered once, "You really give it to him." Silence. Then something creaked upstairs. Not loud, just enough. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The dog didn't bark, but it looked toward the stairs. She stood, picked up the doll, and walked toward the old room. That room hadn't been touched in 8 years. Not since they pulled her daughter's body from what was left. She stepped over the threshold like she was entering a grave, dust thick on the bed, curtains eaten at the corners, the floor still stained from when the fire reached the dresser. She placed the doll down on the bed, turned around, and stopped. The drawer was open, just an inch. It hadn't been. She reached out. I pulled it fully. Inside, an envelope, unmarked, no dust on it. Her hand shook when she picked it up. She didn't open it. She left it on the bed beside the doll. I walked out, down the hall, back to the kitchen, poured herself something strong. Didn't sip it, drank the whole thing. And then, in the middle of the night, when the wind outside rose just enough to make the barn creak, she heard a knock on her door. One knock, then nothing. She waited, stood behind the door, didn't open it. "Ma'am," came the voice. "I need to ask something." She opened the door. The man stood in the same clothes, hands clasped. I lied. She stared. "I didn't mean to. You said she gave you the doll." "She did." "Then what's the lie?" "I think it wasn't her." The wind passed behind him, carried a strange scent. Dust, straw, ash. "Who was it?" "Then?" He looked down. "She knew your name. She knew the doll, but she wasn't a child." "What was she?" "She walked like she was buried twice." That hit her hard. She backed away, just an inch. He stayed still. "She told me to give you the doll. That's all?" "And she said—" He hesitated. "She said you'd understand." She waited. "She said you buried her, but you never buried what came after." The wind slammed the barn door then. The dog barked once. She didn't move. "You leavin'?" she asked. He nodded. "Good." He stepped back off the porch, turned, stopped. "She told me one more thing." She didn't ask what. He said it anyway. "She said you left the second doll in the well." Her stomach dropped. He looked back once, then limped toward the cart. She stood in the doorway until he vanished in the dark. The doll stayed upstairs. The envelope was unopened. The wind didn't sleep, and neither did she. He speaks of a fire, of a girl who sewed dolls that didn't burn, and of a badge that cracked under boots. He didn't sleep much. The straw didn't bother him. The cold didn't either. What kept him up was the sound the barn made just before dawn, like someone walking above him without weight. She heard it too from the kitchen, but neither of them said so when morning came. She brought him coffee. No milk, no sugar, just hot, bitter, and quiet. "You sleep?" "A bit." "You talk in your sleep." "I don't dream." "Didn't say you did." She didn't sit, just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching him sip. "You're still here. You told me I could stay." "That was last night." He nodded. "Still want me gone?" She didn't answer. Let the silence linger. Then, "Why do you have that doll?" He didn't look surprised. "She gave it to me." "Yeah, you said. She sewed my name once. In a corner, under the quilt." She stiffened. "I remember it." "What name?" He looked up. "Mason." Her hand twitched. "Mason what?" He hesitated. "Didn't have one." She stepped into the barn. "No last name?" "No, ma'am." "Liar." "Could be." "You said she sewed your name." "She didn't know my last name either." She didn't like that answer. She paced slowly, eyes scanning him, looking for something loose. "You were in the fire." "No." "But you remember it." "Smelled it from the next ridge." "Why were you on the ridge?" "I was watching the shed burn." She stopped walking. "Why?" "I couldn't move." She stared. "Because someone held me down," he added. "Who?" He just stared at the coffee. She grabbed the cup from his hand, threw it out into the dust. "You saying you knew her?" "I'm saying she knows me." "How?" "She stitched me." "That ain't an answer." "I was sick. I couldn't stand it. She brought food, sat outside, wouldn't come close." "When?" "Years ago. She was just a child. I was worse. Do you remember her voice?" He nodded. "Say it." She never said full sentences, just asked if I liked honey, asked if I could smell rain, asked what color burned slowest. She exhaled sharply. "Sit down on a sack of feed. Color doesn't burn. It does when you stitch it wrong." She looked at him now. Longer, harder. "You from the ridge?" "Was." "Anyone else there?" "Not anymore. She takes your food every day." "Not every." "What else does she take?" He didn't answer. "What else?" "A badge." That froze the air. She stood. "You saw it?" "Yes." "Whose?" He swallowed. "Wasn't hers." "You saying she stole it?" "I'm saying she buried it." "Where?" He pointed toward the fields behind the barn. By the stump. West side. You sure? I watched her dig. She stepped outside. He followed. The wind had picked up. Dry. Dusty. She stood at the edge of the barnyard. That stump? He nodded. You dig. I will. You find nothing, you leave. He didn't argue, just walked to the stump, slow, dragging a dull spade from the side wall. She watched, arms folded. He dug carefully, like he already knew how deep. The dirt turned darker near the roots. He slowed, then stopped. Hands reached in, pulled something out wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it, laid it on the stump. She stepped closer. A cracked badge, bent, tarnished, still bore the star, still bore the initials scratched on the back. WT. Her face broke. Only a second, but it broke. She took it. You know what that is? I know what it used to mean. Used to mean law. He looked at her. Now it just means someone got away with it. She nodded once. He watched her turn the badge over. She burned it, she whispered. She tried. She said it wouldn't. She buried it instead. You said she stitched your name. She did. She buried your name too? No. Then why don't I know you? He didn't answer. You knew her. I still do. She walked back to the barn, sat down again. He followed, sat on the floor this time. I didn't want the feed sack anymore. She placed the badge on the table beside the doll. You believe in curses? I believe in memory. You said that yesterday. Still true. What's stitched into that quilt? More than thread. You speak in riddles. Number just scared of saying it plain. Say it anyway. He looked her in the eye. She stitched your name too. Her mouth opened, closed. That quilt. It ain't just cloth. She stood. He didn't stop her. She went inside the house, into the back room, pulled the quilt from the chest at the foot of the bed. It was lighter than she remembered, but it's cold. She brought it outside. Where? He pointed to the corner. She flipped it over. It took her a second, but she saw it. Tiny red thread, nearly faded. 2 letters. MW. She dropped it. You see it? He nodded. You understand what it means? No. Then why'd she do it? To remember. I didn't forget. She knew that. She died anyway. I think she wanted you to know she didn't go alone. That quieted everything again. Wind settled. The air hung dry. He picked up the quilt. I folded it carefully. She stitched what she knew. She knew too much. She watched too much. She paid for it. They both sat quiet again. Then she said, You stayin'? I can. The cart is still rolling? Yes. Then stay. He nodded. She picked up the doll, looked it in the face. You said she didn't burn. He watched her. She sewed fire into her quilt. She stared at him. Say that again. She told me the only way to kill a fire is to bury the match that lit it. What lit hers? He looked at the badge. She didn't need to ask again. She already knew. He walks her house like he's been here before. She follows him until he stops in the room that burned. He stepped inside without asking. She didn't stop him, just watched how his eyes moved across the room like he was checking for something he'd left behind. He didn't touch anything. She followed close, silent. Floorboards don't creak, he said. They used to. He looked down, stepped near the corner of the rug. It still smells like ash. You sure that's not you? He half smiled. She didn't. He stepped toward the back of the room. Stopped. She didn't tell him where to go. He went straight to the stairs. She didn't speak until he did. This is where it started, wasn't it? She didn't answer. Right here, he said, pointing to the boards just left of the first step. She looked at them. I knew them well. The color never came back right. The varnish bubbled. The burn stayed beneath everything, no matter how hard she scrubbed. You were in the fire? He didn't answer. He stepped onto the first stair. Then the second. She didn't stop him. He moved slowly, careful, like each step had memory in it. At the top, he paused. I looked down the hall. Then he turned left, straight to the room. She stopped in the doorway. Let him go in alone. He walked to the corner near the dresser, bent down. His fingers hovered above the floor. You remember it? He nodded. I don't believe you. He didn't move. This room was hers, she said. You know that? I do. Have you ever been in it before? Yes. When? After. After what? The burning. She stepped in. A cold came with her. He stood up. I looked at her. You open it. She knew what he meant. No. He looked at the drawer, then at her. Is it still there? No. You sure? She nodded. He didn't believe her. She didn't care. He knelt again, reached under the drawer, fingers found the notch, pulled. The drawer slid open with a soft groan. He looked inside. Nothing but dust. You moved it, he said. No. He didn't speak. She walked over. I stood behind him. You think I forgot where I put it? No. Then why you lookin'? He stood. Because you're lying. You don't know that. I do. How? Because I left it. She didn't respond. He looked her in the eyes. I wrote it, he said. That stopped everything. You what? I wrote the letter. When? 2 winters after. She blinked slowly. Why? She told me to. Who? You know who. No, she said. I don't. He stepped back, sat on the edge of the bed. I looked around the room like it had changed. She told me you wouldn't open it. She was right. She told me you were still digging for what started it, not what ended it. Does she say anything else? She said she hated the sound the fire made. That made her knees weak. She sat on the floor, doll still in her lap. I heard it too, she whispered. It cracked like ice. I thought it was her bones. He looked down. She stared at the rug. She sewed up until the smoke reached the windows. I know. You weren't in the fire. No. Then how do you know? I was under the porch. She turned sharply. What? I saw the light come through the cracks. You were hiding. I was left there. By who? He didn't answer. She stood, grabbed his shirt. By who? He looked her dead in the eye. Sheriff. She let go. Backed up. You're lying. I wish I was. He wouldn't. He did. Her hands shook. He said. He knew she'd seen too much. No. She saw him that night. No. He left the badge in her hands. She turned away. He came back for it. The man said, but she already hid it. She never told me. She wouldn't. She told me everything. Except what mattered. She walked to the window, looked out. The barn stood quiet. The sky was low, dull. You said you wrote the letter. I did. Why? Because I couldn't keep what she told me. You should have. I tried. Then why now? He stood. Because something's waking up. She turned. What do you mean? You feel it. Say it. She's not done. She walked to the drawer, pulled it open, reached beneath the paper lining, pulled out the envelope, unopened, unmarked. He saw it, nodded once. You read it? No. Why? Because I was scared. Of what? That it'd say she forgave me. She didn't speak. He took one step forward. You can open it now. No. Why not? She doesn't need me to. You sure? She's already told me everything I need to know. He looked at the doll in her hands. She never stitched my name again, he said. She didn't have to. She burned the thread. She left it in the well. They stood there a while. No words. The letter between them. The drawer is still open. The floor was still scarred. The room held its breath. She finally opens the letter. It's not her writing, not her daughter's, but it's addressed to her by name. She didn't open it until well after midnight. She sat by the back door, wrapped in her old shawl. The lamp was low. The dog wouldn't come near the threshold. The letter sat on her knee like it had weight. The drawer hadn't creaked when she pulled it. The envelope hadn't yellowed like it should have. It looked like it had been written last night, still unmarked. No stamp, just her name, written in a hand she didn't recognize. No address, no return. She'd held it before, but it never broke. She looked toward the barn. It was quiet, no sound from the man, no footsteps in the straw. She lit a second match, held the edge of it near, then pulled back, then opened the letter. The fold was stiff. The paper was thick. No ink bled. The writing leaned too far left, like it was scared to finish a sentence. She read the first line. You don't know me, but I know you watched. Her fingers curled slightly. You weren't supposed to be out that night. She wasn't supposed to scream. The wind outside pulled at the porch beams. She read on. They told me it'd be quiet. I believed them. Her eyes narrowed. I saw what they did. I heard her try to crawl. She gripped the edge of the chair. She called for you. They thought she was already gone. The lamp flickered. I didn't stop them. I didn't light it, but I didn't stop them. She lowered the letter, closed her eyes. Then I raised it again. I'm not part of them. I never was. They used me. She flipped the page. It wasn't signed, but at the bottom, in smaller handwriting, I left something by the well. She stood. The wind pushed the screen door open like it had been waiting. She stepped onto the porch barefoot, letter still in hand. The well was down the hill, boarded, old rope still tied off to the fence post, grass dead in a circle around it. No one had gone near it in years. She walked slowly. The cold didn't bother her. At the edge, she stopped, pulled the lantern high, board still nailed, still black around the seams. One corner is loose. She knelt, slipped her fingers. Under the plank, something moved. Not alive, just loose. A slip of cloth, folded, burned at the edge. She pulled it out, unfolded it. Inside, a child's shoe, charred, small, laces stitched with red thread. She sat back, stared. The shoe had her daughter's name on the inside flap. Faded ink, but still there. She looked at the letter again. I left something by the well. She read the line again. The fire hadn't taken everything. She took the shoe to the porch, set it on the rail. Then the letter. She stared at both. Then I walked inside, pulled the stove door open, dropped the letter in. I watched it curl. I watched the words blackened. I watched the paper scream without a sound. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She turned. The man stood at the hallway's edge, barefoot, still. You read it? He asked. Yes. Was it hers? No. Then who? Don't know. He nodded once. You gonna keep it? No. You burn it? Yes. Why? Because it waited too long. He stepped inside. You believe it? Parts. What parts? She screamed. She did. She called for me. She did. You were there? He didn't answer. She walked to the table, sat down. He leaned against the wall. She said she wasn't part of them. She was. You sure? She knew their names. Doesn't mean she lit the fire. Number, but she handed them the match. She left the shoe. She tried to make it right. She failed. They sat silent. The wind touched the windows. She looked at the stove. Flame dying. I thought the letter would break something, she said. It did. Not enough. He looked toward the hall. She said you watched. I did. She said you were supposed to stay inside. I was. You didn't. No. Why not? I heard her crying. He looked down. I opened the back door. I walked barefoot across the yard. I smelled smoke. He stepped closer. She screamed again. I was too late. He sat across from her. She wasn't supposed to be alone. But she was. I was there. Too late. They looked at the stove. Smoke is still curling. She whispered, They thought she was gone. She wasn't. I saw her eyes open. He nodded. She saw mine. She always did. She looked up. She knew it wasn't over. He placed the doll on the table. She's not done. I know. You gonna dig? Not yet. Are you waiting for something? For her. They sat in silence. Then he asked, You think the others got letters? If they did, they burned them too. He nodded. She never needed ink. No, she said. She stitched her truth. And buried the rest. She stitched what she couldn't say. He looked at the stove. So did I. She looked at him. That wasn't your writing. I didn't say it was. Then whose? He didn't answer. She stared hard. He whispered, You know who. She did, but she didn't say it. She digs near the oak, past where the doll was buried. Find another grave, with no cross, with teeth inside. She brought the shovel out at first light. No words, just the metal scrape of it dragging through dirt. He didn't ask what she was doing. He followed. The oak stood crooked at the edge of the yard. Old bark peeled like it wanted to forget something. She knelt where the grass thinned, pressed her palm to the ground. Where is it? He nodded once. She dug, not rushed, not angry, just steady. He watched from a few feet back, hands folded, not shaking. You buried the doll here? Yes. When? 2 days after the fire. And this? Didn't know it was here. You sure? No. The shovel hit something soft. Not wood, not stone, just a change in breath. She paused. He stepped forward. You want help? No. She dug with her hands, pulled back a layer of earth, found the cloth first. Dark, stiff, wrapped around something small. She didn't open it. She lifted it out slow, then sat beside the hole. He crouched near. She peeled the cloth open. Inside, a badge, cracked straight through, one half twisted like it had been stepped on hot. Some teeth, not full, maybe 4, all child small, and a button, red, worn smooth. She stared at it. He didn't speak. She touched the badge. You recognize this? Yes. Whose? Sheriff's. Old or new? Old. She looked at him. Does that mean yours? He nodded. She blinked slowly. You carried this? They made me. Made you? I was the smallest. That ain't reason. They said it'd keep me quiet. Did it? For a while. She didn't look at him. She turned the badge in her hand, ran her thumb over the split edge. Have you ever worn it? No. Ever want to? No. You dig this hole? No. You sure? Yes. Why here? Because this tree doesn't talk. She stared at the trunk. I look older now, blacker near the roots. You remember when? I do. You bring the teeth? No. The button? No. She lifted the teeth one by one, held them in her palm. You know whose? No. Guess. Maybe hers. Don't lie. I'm not. She opened the cloth wider. There was a second piece inside. Paper, damp, folded. She pulled it out, unfolded. No words, just a drawing. Child's hand, stick figure with a star on the chest, a line through it. She handed it to him. He looked. Yours. He nodded. She folded it again, put it in her pocket. You carry that too? No. You swear? Yes. She stood. He stayed crouched. She looked at the hole. You think this was a grave? Yes. You think it still is? No. Why not? Because graves are for rest. And this? This is a warning. She looked at the tree again. Why this tree? It saw everything. She walked around it, saw the notch in the bark. Fresh, knifed in. She touched it. A single letter. M. Who carved this? I don't know. Are you lying? No. Do you ever mark trees? No. Have you ever marked graves? I never had one to mark. She dropped the badge back into the cloth, tied it tight, reburied it. Didn't say a word. He watched. You sure? She nodded. You don't want it? No. Why not? Because I know what it means. He didn't move. She patted the dirt flat. I stood over it. Have you ever buried anything else? Yes. What? My voice. She looked at him. Have you found it yet? No. You think she did? She found everything. They walked back in silence. The shovel dragged behind her. When they reached the porch, she turned. Do you carry any more of these things? No. Are you hiding anything? No. You know what that badge means in this place? Yes. Then don't lie again. He nodded. She leaned the shovel against the rail. You stayin'? If you want. I don't know yet. He stepped toward the barn. She called out. Have you ever seen her dig? He stopped. Once. She says why. She said the ground holds better than a drawer. She nodded once. He disappeared into the barn. She sat on the porch. I watched the sun pull up slowly. Somewhere in the yard, the dirt shifted and settled again. The town said the fire took everything, but the boots she finds under the floor still smell like tobacco and guilt. The cellar had always been cold, but that morning it felt colder. She didn't bring the lantern, just the match and the memory. The dog stayed at the top of the stairs, whining once, then backing away. She stepped down slowly, counted 6 steps. The 7th creaked. She reached the bottom. I stood still. Nothing moved. The cornerboard was still warped, just like it had been 8 years ago. Her husband had meant to fix it. He never did. She crouched, ran her hand along the edge, loosened the nail with the butt of the knife, pried it open, pulled the board up, and laid it beside her. Dust is thick, but something darker underneath. She reached in. Fingers found leather. She pulled out the boots. They were heavy, worn smooth at the heel, blackened at the toe. One lace was broken, but the leather still held shape. She set them down, let them sit in the light, then leaned closer, sniffed. Tobacco and something else. Sweat. Guilt. She flipped them over. Inside the left boot, scratched in rough strokes, WT. She didn't blink, just stared. He'd said the badge was his, but the boots, those belonged to the man who left the fire burning. She stood, carried them upstairs. He was sitting at the table, didn't say a word when she came in. She dropped them in front of him. "What's your size?" He looked at them. "No." "You sure?" "Yes." "Have you ever worn 'em?" "No." She sat, folded her arms. "You know where I found them?" He didn't answer. "You want to guess?" He stayed quiet. "Cellar," she said. "Under the 7th step." He nodded once. "I didn't put them there," he said. "Then who did?" "I think you know." She stared. "You saying he came back after the fire?" "I'm saying he never left." She leaned forward. "You saw him?" "Yes." "When?" "After." "Where?" "By the shed." "What was he doing?" "Smoking. Watching." She closed her eyes. He said, "I saw him light one while she screamed." She opened her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I didn't think you were ready." "Don't decide that for me." He nodded. "Describe him." "You already know what he looked like." "Say it." "Tall. My left eye drooped. Burned scar on the neck. Always had a toothpick." She exhaled hard. He added, "He smelled like ash and cheap whiskey." "Have you ever talked to him?" "Once." "What did he say?" "Said if I ever opened my mouth, they'd bury me deeper than her." She didn't move. "Was that before or after the badge cracked?" "After." She reached down, touched the toe of one boot. "They said everything burned." "They lied." "Why keep these?" "He couldn't throw them." "Why not?" "Because they were his." She picked one up. I turned it in her hand. Leather didn't give. Still strong. "Does he ever wear them in front of you?" "Every time." "Do you recognize the scratch marks?" "Yes." "He makes you carry them?" "Yes." "Why?" "To remember." "Did it work?" He didn't answer. She stood, took the boots to the chest at the end of the hall, opened the lid, set them inside. I closed it, locked it, carried the key back to the table, set it down in front of him. "You touch it, I'll bury you beside the doll." "I won't." "Have you ever seen him hit her?" "Yes." "Has she ever hit back?" "She bit him." She almost smiled. "Does she leave a mark?" "Right above his wrist." "She drew it later?" "Yes." "What did it look like?" "Teeth." He leaned forward. "She drew it on the back of the doll." She looked up. "What?" "Behind the braid, under the yarn." She stood. I walked to the shelf, picked up the doll. I turned it in. Pull back the yarn. There, faint, tiny red stitch, half circle with 4 sharp lines inside. "A bite." She stared. She whispered, "Why'd she do that?" "So, no one would forget." She sat back down. "You believe she meant for us to find it?" "She knew we would." "She always knew too much." "She didn't know enough to run." She looked at him. "You sure?" He didn't answer. She set the doll back down. I looked at the key. "Do you think anyone else knows?" "About the boots." "About what he did." "They all know. But no one says. No one ever does." She stared at the key again. "Do you ever think she forgave him?" "No." She wrote like she did. She stitched like she didn't. They sat there, still. The boots locked away, the key on the table, and nothing outside but wind. She lifts the boards off the well. Something dry moves down there, a sound without voice. She drops the doll inside. She waited until just after noon, when the heat softened the boards and the wind had gone still. No clouds, no birds, just the buzz of distant flies and the sound of her breath. She walked to the edge of the yard, past the shed, past the crooked oak. The well sat quiet, boards nailed down like a wound stitched wrong. She stood over it. He followed a few steps behind, slower now. "You sure?" She didn't answer. She set the hammer down, pulled her gloves on, bent, pried the first board loose. It snapped at the end. Second came easier. By the time the third gave, he had stepped back. Not far. Just enough. "You don't have to." "I do." "You think she wants that?" "She's not the one askin'." The last board came up with a moan. The well opened. Black. Still. Dry air rushed out, not cold, just old. It smelled of stone and damp ash. She tied the rope tight, laid the doll on the edge. "Have you ever dropped anything down here before?" he asked. "No." "Then why now?" She tied the string around the doll's waist, knotted it twice. He watched her hands. You think it'll come back? No. You want it to? No. She walked to the crank. He stepped closer. That won't stop it. She turned once. It's not for stopping. He waited. She finished it. It's for starting. She lowered it. The rope creaked, spun slowly. The doll dropped foot by foot, spinning gently. The wind didn't move. Neither of them spoke. Just rope, then a faint tap, then nothing. How deep? He asked. Never measured. She leaned close, listened. He stepped to her side. There's something down there. Yes. What? She looked at him. The part of me that stayed quiet. He looked down again. You want to pull it back up? No. She tied the rope off, stepped back. It's hers now. He looked again. Something moved. I know. You see it? No. But you felt it. She nodded. He swallowed. That breath? Yes. Wasn't wind? No. They stood there, still. The rope trembled, a soft shift like something brushing against the stone inside. She didn't blink. He whispered, It's breathing. She whispered back, Let it. She walked to the boards, picked one up, held it over the opening. He grabbed her wrist. Don't cover it. Why not? You open something. You don't shut it. She paused. Then what? Let it speak. It already did. Then we listen. They stood over the hole. Down below, the doll didn't move, but the rope bent a little more. He said, Something's pulling. She didn't flinch. The knot stretched, cracked, then held, then slipped. The doll vanished fast. The rope snapped from her hands. Slide straight down. She jumped back. Gone. He nodded. They waited. The wind picked up just enough to turn the crank once. Then silence. He whispered, It took it. She whispered, I gave it. He stepped back. You all right? No. You want to leave? No. She stared into the hole. It wasn't just her doll. He waited. She kept staring. She stitched something inside it. What? A map. To what? Who did this? He looked at her. You sure? She sewed with red thread only when she was scared. He blinked. You think she knew where it started? I think she knew where it ended. He stepped forward. Then what do we do now? She looked at the crank. We wait for it to echo. You think it will? She shook her head. This well never echoed back. Then why drop it? Because maybe this time it will. She turned away, left the rope, left the boards. He stayed by the well, watched the black. It didn't move again, but something in it had shifted, and whatever had breathed once hadn't finished. She returns to town with boots in hand and badge in pocket. No one asks where she found them, but the church doors stay shut. She rode the mule slowly, didn't rush. The wind picked up only once right before the town came into view. It didn't bring dust, just silence. He walked beside her, cart behind, eyes on the road. He didn't ask where they were going. She didn't say anything. She had the boots wrapped in a flour sack, tied twice, badge tucked into her coat. No one spoke until the church bell rang once, out of rhythm, then stopped. He looked up. They saw us. I know. They passed the post office, shuttered, past the grocer, empty front, flies by the window. She didn't stop. At the sheriff's station, the door was cracked. She dismounted. He didn't follow. You wait here. I know. She stepped inside. One desk, one chair, a file cabinet. That leaned left, like it had given up. The new sheriff stood by the window, back turned. She didn't knock. She walked straight to the desk, pulled the badge from her pocket, set it down, didn't speak. He turned, saw what it was, didn't blink, didn't touch it, just looked at her. You know what that is? He nodded. Say it. It's the old ones. She waited. You know where I found it? He didn't answer. I didn't ask a question, she said. In the dirt. Wrong. He said nothing. Under the roots, by a grave with no name. He didn't move. She stepped closer. You know why it was there? Still no answer. She leaned in. You know. He swallowed. She lowered her voice. You were there, weren't you? He blinked. I looked away. She turned, started toward the door. He said, You want justice? She stopped. No. Then why bring it? So you remember. He looked down at the badge. She stepped out. The preacher was across the street. He saw her, didn't wave, didn't nod, just slipped inside the chapel and closed the door. She crossed the street anyway. I tried the handle. Locked. She knocked once. Nothing. Twice. Still. Nothing. She stood there. The cart pusher leaned against the post. You done? Not yet. She stepped back to the door, raised her fist, then let it drop. They don't want to hear it. They never did. She turned to him. You think she prayed before it happened? Yes. You think anyone listened? No. They walked back to the mule, loaded the boots into the cart. He said, What now? We go to the store. It's closed. I know. They walked. The general store still had its sign, still had the bell above the door. She pushed it open. No one inside, but the register still worked. She walked to the back, found the old records box, flipped through receipts, notes, orders, then stopped, held up a paper, showed him. Sheriff, size 10 boots, 2 pairs, paid in cash. He looked at the date. The same week her daughter burned. She folded the paper. I took it with her. At the counter, she left a coin. He said, Why leave anything? So they know I was here. They stepped outside. An old man sat by the bench near the well pump. Same spot every morning, same stare. He didn't look up when she passed, but he muttered, She came back. She turned. What did you say? He didn't answer. Speak up. He looked at her, eyes milked over but sharp underneath. She came back, he said again. Who? Your girl. How do you know? I heard it well. Her voice dropped. You what? I heard her breathe. She stared. When? 2 nights ago. She looked at the cart pusher. He was already staring at the sky. She faced the man again. You tell. Anyone? He shook his head. They don't ask. She stepped forward, kneeled. You see anything? He nodded. What? Doll. In my dreams. Same dress. She backed up, stood, took a long breath. He called out, She ain't done. I know. They walked out of town, past the school, past the mill. No one came out, no windows opened. She stopped once. I looked back. The church door is still closed. The sheriff is still watching. The cart is still creaking behind them. He said, You think they'll ever ask? No. Why? Because they already know. They kept walking. The badge stayed on the desk. The boots stayed in the sack. But the town, they'd already buried the questions, and they weren't ready for what would dig them back up. She pulls apart the old quilt. Under the last corner, a word stitched in red. Wait, it wasn't a thread. It was hair. She didn't plan to wash the quilt. But after the badge, the boots, the silence in town, she needed her hands busy. She cleared the table, brought the basin in from the porch, draw warm water from the pump, laid the quilt out slowly. The cart pusher sat nearby, sharpening a broken knife on a flat stone. He didn't look up. She started at the corner, unstitched each square by hand. One by one, each patch came loose. Blue cotton, feed sack, a swatch from her old apron. She paused in the 3rd row. I touched it gently. She always stitched too tight, she said. He nodded. Said loose thread let go sin. She looked at him. You believe that? I do now. She kept going, fingers quick. The 5th row came apart easier, the edge where her daughter used to rush. Stitches crooked, angled wrong. She smiled once, barely. Then her hand stopped, near the hem. Something rough caught her nail. She bent down, picked at it. It wasn't a thread, not cotton. She pulled slowly. It gave just enough to reveal itself. A single strand, dark, coarse, hair. Her breath caught. She touched the back of her own head. No match. She leaned closer. There, at the base of the seam, was more. Woven through. She turned the quilt, laid it flat, followed the hair. It looped once, then again, a shape forming beneath the final panel. She unpicked it fast. The last corner dropped loose. She stared. The hair had been stitched in a single word. Wait. The letters weren't large, but they were deep, tugged into the fabric so tight it puckered. She whispered, She did this. The cart pusher stood. I walked to her side. I looked down. She told me to give you that. When? First night. Why now? She said you'd need it when the town stopped speaking. She looked up. You knew this was in here? He nodded. You let me tear it open. She said you had to find it. She touched the word again. Wait. She knew I wouldn't forget. She knew you'd pretend to. She uses her own hair? He nodded. She said thread breaks. Her hand trembled. She touched them again. You think this was meant for now? She said it was the last thing she ever stitched. Her eyes burned. She didn't blink. Why that word? Because she saw what was coming. She looked down again. The quilt no longer held warmth. It felt hollow, like it had given up something. She whispered her daughter's name. The wind caught it, carried it outside. The cart pusher didn't speak. She stood. Hold the quilt close. I folded it once, then again. Set it on the chair. You ever wait for something that never came? She asked. He nodded. She turned. Are you still waiting? Yes. What for? He looked at the ground. Forgiveness. You think she'd give it? No. You want it anyway. He didn't answer. She poured the basin out. Water hit the dirt like blood. She turned back to him. Did she say anything else? Yes. What? She said to follow the thread. She paused. There's more? He nodded. Where? In the shed. She didn't ask how he knew. She picked up the key. I started walking. He followed. The shed door hadn't been opened in years. Hinges rusted, bottom split from storms. She unlocked it, pulled hard. Inside, it smelled like dried sweat and forgotten names. She lit a match. Hold it high. The loom sat against the back wall. Still intact, still waiting. She stepped toward it. The cart pusher stayed at the door. She knelt, looked beneath. There, tangled around one spindle, was more of the hair, coiled, knotted. She pulled gently. It came free, wrapped around a finger-length scrap of linen. She unrolled it. On the cloth, more stitching. Not letters this time, symbols. One square, one circle, one cross. She looked back. What does it mean? She said it's where she buried the rest. The rest of what? He stepped inside. Names. She held the cloth tight. She buried names. He nodded. Where? He pointed to the hill, behind the well, where the grass grew too tall and the stones had no markings. She said that's where the quiet lives. She stood. The quilt is still folded, cloth in hand, hair in the thread. She looked at the loom one last time. You believe she did this for me? No. Then who? For the ones who stopped asking. She turned. I walked past him. Wind lifted the loose edge of the quilt. The word shimmered red in the light. Wait. But she wasn't waiting anymore. She finds the cart burning before dawn. No footprints, no wind, just smoke and the smell of sugar and death. She smelled it before she saw it. Not wood, not smoke. Something sweeter. Molasses maybe. Boiled too long. Burnt into the air. She stepped onto the porch barefoot. The grass was cold. The wind was still. Still no rustle, no night birds. The barn glowed soft at first, then pulsed. She walked fast, not running. She stopped 10 feet from the door. The cart was already flames. No footprints in the dirt. No trail. Just fire. He stood beside it. No panic. No bucket. Just his eyes watching the wheels melt inward. You do this? She asked. No. You see who did? No. She stepped closer. You smell that? He nodded. Sugar. Why? They want it to smell good when it dies. She looked at him. He didn't blink. You know who? They don't knock. She stood beside him now. The fire didn't crackle, just rose. The sky hadn't lightened yet. She said, You're not going to stop it. He shook his head. She asked, Why? They want it gone. The cart? Everything that remembers. She watched a wheel collapse. You told me it wasn't done. It's not. Then why this? He didn't answer. She looked into the fire. Inside the cart's ruin, something stood still. A shape, small. She stepped forward. Heat pulled at her. Don't, he said. She didn't stop. She stepped to the edge of the flames. Inside the belly of the burning cart sat the doll, clean, unmoved. She said, You see it? He said, It came back. She whispered, Again. He stepped beside her. No scorch. No melt. No thread turned. She crouched, didn't touch it, just watched it sit there like it never left. She said, It reminds me. He said, It never left. The roof above the cart cracked. Wood dropped. Sparks shot up. She didn't flinch. He stepped back. The cart collapsed inward, but the doll slid forward, untouched. Smoke curled like breath from something buried too long. She stepped into the barn. He shouted, Wait! She reached through the ash, pulled the doll out. It was cold. He said, It's not supposed to be cold. She looked at him. I think it was never warm. She stepped back. The fire behind her snapped loud. Finally loud. She didn't look back. They stood together, the doll in her hand. He said, "That cart held everything." She nodded. It held memories. It held names. It held maps. She looked at him. It held her. He swallowed. The flames touched the roof. The barn creaked. "You think it'll spread?" "No." "Why not?" "She only wanted the cart." "Why now?" "She's ready." "For what?" "To finish what they didn't." She looked at the doll. Behind the stitched mouth, one thread had come loose. Just one. She touched it, said her daughter's name again. He whispered, "You think she hears you?" She nodded. She always did. They stepped out of the barn. The fire didn't follow. Just stayed. Contained, controlled, intentional. They stood in the yard, silent. The wind is still gone. He said, "Are you going back to the hill?" She nodded. He said, "Tonight?" She nodded again. "You need to take that." She held the doll tighter. "I know." "You scared?" "No." "You should be." She looked at him. "I already was." He looked at the barn one last time, then turned toward the house. She stayed, watched until the fire stopped breathing, and the night returned to its waiting silence. She digs 2 graves where the well breathes. One for the doll, one for the badge. The third stays open. She carried the spade and the doll at the same time. No sack, no wrapping. The doll dangled from her hand, head low, stitch loose across the mouth. The thread moved with each step like it was trying to say something. He followed behind. Neither of them spoke. The sky was pale, just past dusk. Enough light to see the hill, enough dark to forget what lay under it. The well sat crooked at the edge. She stopped beside it. The dirt was soft here. The grass is thin. Earth still turned from years ago. She touched the ground. "This is the place." He nodded. "You sure?" "Yes." She knelt, dug slowly, measured, didn't rush. He stood beside the well. I watched the rope sway gently, though there was no wind. "You think it hears us?" It never stopped. She kept digging. When the first hole was 2 feet deep, she set the doll inside, the head tilted toward her. She paused, brushed dirt from its face. "You already came back once." She set it down gently, covered it, pressed the dirt firm, stood. No words. Then I started digging the second. He didn't ask why. He knew. She pulled the badge from her coat pocket, wiped it clean once more. It gleamed for half a second, then disappeared under the soil. That hole was deeper. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. He said, "You think they'll stay buried this time?" "No." "Then why bury them?" "So I don't carry them anymore." He looked at her hands, red, cracked, dry. "You carried them for a long time." "I carried what they left." She picked up the spade again. I walked 5 feet over, started the third hole. He didn't speak, just watched. She dug slower now, 1 inch at a time. He stepped forward. "You sure?" "Yes." "You know what this means?" "Yes." She hit a root, yanked, didn't stop. He asked, "Who's it for?" She didn't answer. He said, "You or me?" Still no answer. She kept digging. The dirt piled neatly beside her. He looked back at the well. The rope had stopped swaying. The air felt thinner now. She stood. I looked down at the third grave. Didn't put anything in. Just looked. He asked, "What happens next?" "We wait." "For what?" She looked at the well. "For it to speak again." He stepped closer to the open grave. "You think it'll choose?" "No." "You think it already has?" "Yes." She dropped the spade. I walked back to the other 2 graves, kneeled beside the dolls, pressed her hand to the soil. It was warm. She didn't blink. She whispered something, too soft to hear. He didn't ask. He stood over the third grave. It didn't move, but the earth around it felt hollow. He said, "You want me to fill it?" "No." "You want it to stay open?" "Yes." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." He looked at her. "Are you waiting for someone?" "Yes." He didn't ask who. He already knew. She stood, wiped her hands on her dress. I looked at the sky, then the hill, then the barn. Smoke still clung to its roof. She said, "Have you ever dug a grave you hoped you wouldn't use?" He nodded. She stepped beside him. They looked down together. She said, "It's not deep enough." He said, "I'll make it deeper." They didn't speak again. Not that night, not until the ground shifted and the well breathed again. He leaves before sunup. She doesn't follow, but on the porch she finds another doll, stitched from her own quilt. She woke to stillness, the kind that felt planned. No birds, no wind, no sound of boots shifting straw in the barn. Just a quiet that settled deep. She sat up slowly. The room hadn't changed, but something had left. She stepped to the window. The cart was gone. She didn't look for footprints. She knew there wouldn't be any. She opened the door. The sun wasn't up yet. The sky is a faint gray. She looked down. It was sitting on the porch rail. $1. Same shape, same size, but the stitching, not hers, not her daughter's. Different hand, firmer. Be more careful. The thread looked like it had come from an old seam. She stepped closer, ran her fingers over the fabric. She knew the pattern. The red check corner, the faded blue flower stem. This was her quilt. The one folded in the drawer. She looked back through the door. I walked inside. Opened the drawer, empty. She turned. I looked at the doll again. Its hem was signed, a single word stitched in tiny red letters. Ode she didn't touch it. She sat on the porch step, waited. Nothing moved, no cart returning, no figure walking back up the road. She looked toward the barn, still half burned, still silent. She whispered, "You stitched this?" No answer. She reached for the doll, lifted it slowly. It was warm, like it had just been finished. She turned it. No bite mark, no burn, no broken thread, just clean, precise stitching. Too perfect, too final. She brought it inside, set it on the table, sat down. She stared at it. He'd left without goodbye. No knock, no voice, just the doll. She whispered again, "You think this makes it right?" The doll didn't move. She stood, opened the back door, stepped outside. I walked to the hill. The third grave was still open. She stood over it, held the doll, then turned. I walked back to the porch, sat again. Doll in her lap. The thread across its mouth was loose, but not broken. She pulled gently, unraveled it. Inside the seam, tucked between layers of fabric, was a single note. Folded. No envelope, no ink, just stitching. She unfolded it. Not a letter, not a confession, just 3 names. Heron, her daughter's, and his. She read them twice, then dropped the note into the stove. I watched it blacken, didn't watch it burn. She walked to the door, locked it, then stood there, one hand on the knob, one on her chest. She said, "That's the last." But the house didn't believe her, and neither did she.